Here to illuminate, please welcome to the stage, Jamila Demby.
Good evening. How are you all doing? You doing all right? Can I tell you a little secret? This is my first time doing this. This is my first Illuminate Speaks, aka Black TED Talk. Don't tell nobody my secret. I trust you. So before I address the subject at hand, I can't not do this. In the great words of Jerome from Martin, if you know the song, sing along. Can we talk for a minute? Girl, I want to know your name. Come on, y'all. Can we talk for a minute? Girl, I want to know. Give it up for yourselves. Okay, I'm sorry with this whole Black TED Talk setup. I just couldn't help myself. I had to, so thank you for indulging me. Did anybody else do the Mariah Carey hand to ear move? Just me? Okay, don't answer that. It's all right. It's my thing. Well, again, I appreciate you. Thank you for singing along. Thank you for being here today. I'm ready to get going now. So I've been a part of this wonderful institution as the director of EDIA for what will be 2 years in the fall. The same amount of time that I've been in the theater industry. 2 years. So I share this to give context to my message this evening. Albeit brief, my tenure in the theater world, specifically regional theater, has not fallen short on its impact both professionally and personally. In my time here, I've observed that theater dance is a dichotomy. It validates our existence, and it also leads us to negate our former way of thinking and seeing the world. By witnessing various stories on stages, theater can let us just breathe, and it can also cause us to hold our breath. Ultimately, theater illuminates the best of humanity and the worst of humanity, audaciously holding us accountable to turn what is vividly and boldly imagined on stage into a lived reality, abundant with empathy, self-reflection, and love. This evening, I like to hone in on our humanity through the lens of Black storytelling on theater stages. So while Black stories have a long history of being told in theaters, it's no secret that our representation in theater spaces, including production departments, artistic departments, leadership in general, has been, well, underrepresented. And not for the lack of wanting or trying. So how can we build upon existing institutions to further our storytelling? If I may, I'd like to connect you with pieces of my own story of how I went from, well, here, senior, class of 95, yeah, I aged myself, to here, to right here where I am today to speak on the idea of how we can increase our overall participation as Black folks in theater. So when I was 19 or so, I had this seemingly ingenious, unique idea. I wanted to tell my own story, our story really. I wanted to write a fictional book about being Black in America. Yet I knew that the people that I needed to read it, white folks and as well as some non-Black people of color, just wouldn't. Outside of some anomalies, of course, history has never lent itself to any other conclusion. So cleverly, so I thought, I decided that in order to make my story palatable and what I hope to be a sociological think piece, I would have to make the story's protagonist a school-age white girl that would become a young woman. But then I thought, the patriarchy. A young white boy growing into a white man it is, I guess. My plan of action was to write a coming-of-age story with multiple markers of oppression. The trick, to make the markers subtle and ingrained into the story in a way that makes the reader captivated by the plot, but also takes several pauses on the pages where the protagonist's journey encounters various forms of discomfort, experiencing unnamed swipes at life. It's microaggressions. Those are the swipes. I can't recall specifically how I plan to end my book, but I do know I wanted the reader to get bamboozled at the end as they made a connection to systemic racism. Maybe I would have called my book Bamboozled, or Entrapment, or Booyaka, Caught You Being Woke. Okay, not really. I can't have an overt title giving away my covert plan. But how sad is that? That I plan to write a harmless coming-of-age book just to simply get white America to see our humanity. A few years later, I learned that there was a whole John Travolta movie based on the same premise. I considered finding a way to sue him, all the others involved, for plagiarism, even though I never uttered out loud my idea. I can be audacious too. So, why else did I want to write this book? After 19 years of experience in the world as a young black woman and previously as a black girl, my life resume was stacked with racial microaggressions. The onset of this great American novel idea was my experience around hair. Wearing braids is most vivid in my memory because, well, not because of the aesthetics, but because, well, in my high school, while we were decently diverse, there just simply wasn't enough of us. So when I periodically put braids into my hair in high school, I got all the questions. Did your hair grow? Is that your real hair? Wait, there's a hair store? So how do they, meaning the braiders, do it? And my personal favorite, how long did it take as they would give me the expression of shock and seemingly like a world, like around the world glaze around my head, as if I'm like this exotic exhibit. Whew. The more I was subjected to these questions, the more I was bothered. At track practice one day, I complained to my teammates while we were doing some running drills. I said, listen, I'm gonna make a pamphlet. The pamphlet's gonna be all about black hair, answering all the questions. I'm passing it out to everybody. I'm sick of answering these questions. Hair care was just another day-to-day routine, just like brushing your teeth. However, brushing your teeth doesn't come with 21 questions. I need that to be understood. In addition to my hair comments, my microaggression resume included being called articulate just because I articulated, or excuse me, not articulate there, just because I conjugated my verbs as if I weren't expected to. In junior high, 2 white classmates told me, as if it were a compliment, that they were surprised I didn't wave my neck and finger around. In high school, 2 different classmates asked me why there wasn't a White History Month. I told them there was one. I said January, March, April, May, June, August, Saturday, love. You got all the months. We get the shortest one. As a kid and adult, I've gotten the ethnic greeting and forced code switching from white folks that you can tell that that wasn't their normal way, their regular day-to-day way of greeting their white peers. Don't hey girl me if you ain't hey girl and everybody. Just don't, please. I've also not been believed about my black experiences unless someone white speaks about them. Imagine having to have a translator convey your own lived experience. That is wild. These next few examples I don't qualify them as microaggressions, yet these moments help me understand that microaggressions are like a gateway drug to systemic oppression. I've been falsely accused by a convenience store employee of stealing. I've been falsely accused of a traffic violation by a CHP officer. If it wasn't for a friend of mine that was white, that literally translated what I was trying to tell the CHP officer, I would have been given a reckless driving ticket, which again, overuse the word wild. It's wild to me because all my driving life, my friends tease me for driving like a grandma. And finally, in the gaslighting category, about 10 years ago, I attended a public community forum put on by lawmakers in the San Diego Police Department. This was around the time I started participating in local Black Lives Matter events, pictured here to my left. The subject was around body cameras. After about an hour of discussion time that had passed, I felt compelled to raise my hand and ask a question. I asked, how can this discussion go on without one mention of the realities of systemic racism? I also pointed out the recent data that surfaced about the police department's racial disparities adversely affecting Black and brown residents here in San Diego. I needed to know if this key context, the context, would be included in the discussion moving forward. The response, well, I witnessed the police leadership smile generally when I first stood up to ask the question, to a feigned smile by the time my question was fully uttered. Their response was deflection. These collectively are pieces of my pain, but believe you me, my story does also include joy. Humor is my favorite form of joy and has served me well when navigating moments that try to steal it. My story, too, dances a dichotomy. And while my book idea was a bust, I'm grateful that my story has led me to be a theater professional today and a daily witness of the power of storytelling. So again, how can we build upon existing institutions to further our storytelling? Listen, theater makers in the room, friends of theater makers, theater friends, and so forth. Point out a theater's own DEI statements. They're statements on their institutional commitment to improve their diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. When speaking to theater leadership, whether it's the artistic director, managing director, a senior staff member, lighting directors, sound directors, and so forth, intentionally speak to their DEI statements and connect your theatrical work to their commitments. It's funny, when we hear the word institution, it often gives off this like Wizard of Oz type feeling. My apologies. This is a Black Like TED Talk, Illuminate, the Wiz. Gives off a whiz kind of thing. But it's important to remember that people are behind institutions. In my role, I am privileged to participate and witness daily conversations that center around making theater a genuinely more inclusive place. I witness people pause and reflect on their own actions to align with our EDIA goals. That's what we call DEI here at the Globe. I hear intentional conversations about casting wider hiring nets. In collaboration with coworkers, I plan strategies and procedures to best prevent those with marginalized identities from experiencing historic identity-based harm. But it's bigger than just this one theater. My DEI theater colleagues in this work have ongoing conversations within their theaters as well about affecting change. We share ideas and remain in support of each other despite the distance. I must though acknowledge that we are at a time where numerous organizations and businesses are walking back on their DEI commitments. Let's keep that all the way real. But also, let's not let this latest iteration of oppression deter us. We've been here before, and we know how to fight. Our truth is our superpower. And with idea sharing gatherings just like this, we're going to prevail. In June of 2020, a collective of 300 plus BIPOC artists, known as We See You White America Theater, wrote a frank and candid call to action for theaters across the country to do better in including BIPOC creatives in a healthy and effective way. 7 months later, the collective put out an accountability report, and they found that over 100 theaters responded to their statement, speaking to their level of commitment to the work. Now, the Globe, we're one of the respondents, and we're also a member of what's called the League of Resident Theaters, known as LORT. 81 theaters hold LORT memberships. Out of those 81 theaters, approximately 80% have DEI statements on their websites. We have options here. Connect with the leaders behind this work. Find out who's on their DEI committee that's proclaimed as an action step on their website. Reach out to an affinity group chair. Reach out to the community outreach directors if they have not yet already reached out to you. Build relationships with them to advocate for our work. Another thing you can do is call in theater leaders that are already successful showcasing Black work to share their DEI wins with other theaters that are hesitant to integrate our authentic Black storytelling on their own stages. Authentic, not just palatable. There's this palatability myth that in order to ensure subscription sales and box office single ticket sales, our stories can only be of the mildly seasoned variety. We don't season mildly. Our ancestors would never. As an unapologetic optimist, again, witness to goodwill put into action, we can and should leverage publicly stated diversity, equity, and inclusion theater commitments to advance Black storytelling on our stage. One last note. To support Black stage work, we've got to cultivate our theater participation from within. If we're going to be on stage, we need more Black patrons in these seats. There continues to be an ask for Black representation on stage, as there should be. However, working in a historically white theater that tells stories of color, I know that our cast of color needs to see themselves in the audience. When Black shows in particular, with Black shows in particular, they need to see us, they need to hear us. We have a whole call and response culture going on. It hits differently when we're in the seats. So my ask of you all is to bring us to the theater. The most common answer I receive from the question, hey, how did you get in the theater, is that some friend or family member took them to a play some years ago, and now that they're a fan. I say, don't stop at bringing a loved one to the theater one time. Bring them at least 3 times. New life routines take repetition to set in. I'll say this, before I worked here, I would go to a play, fall in love with the experience I had, think to myself, why don't I do this more often? Oh my gosh, that was amazing. And then years would pass. Now that I'm here and I'm a little spoiled with all these free tickets, I've come to a point where I notice if there is a small span of time where I haven't seen a play, it's hard for me. So repetition, let that set in. You know you've done it right when the friend that you brought not only starts to go to the theater on their own, but later they call you up and say, hey, I'm a subscriber. Dreaming even bigger than that, they might become a community partner involving their organization or school or business with the theater. Even bigger than that, they can be on the board. we could use some of us on the boards. It just takes one intentional act. You never know how the domino effect of that may impact Black theater going in the future. I predict it'll be huge, meaningful. To wrap up, as I envision an increase of Black excellence taking up theater spaces, I visualize what that means for Black lives. Sometimes I think to myself, what would my life be like if I never felt the need to have had to write that book, that not so novel idea? My hope in sharing my story, I hope I could do my part to affect change against anti-Blackness, that we could live in a world where understanding Black humanity is a reality, not just an occasional novelty. If we tie our work into theater's DEI commitments, if we continue to build relationships with the people behind these institutions that are fighting the good fight, if we bring us to the theater repetitiously to the point where we are seeing a good amount of us in the audience is not a surprise, but a norm. With these actions together, we can imagine a world where authentic Black storytelling opportunities can continue to grow and to thrive on stages at a volume that we've never seen before. In a world where national politicians and local far-right activists are literally removing our stories from public consumption, we are obligated to show the world that our stories are not up for debate. We are here to tell them boldly, overtly, with joy, unapologetically, and fully seasoned. Thank you.